afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Speaker Nabih Berri refuses to meet with a delegation from the Association of Banks in Lebanon as they oppose tax measures proposed by Parliament to fund a new wage scale. State security forces arrest a car theft gang in the eastern Bekaa Valley as part of the implementation of the security plan in the region. And pro-Russian separatists turned down an amnesty offer handed by the government in exchange for laying down their weapons. Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri has refused to meet with a delegation from the Association of Banks in Lebanon before it apologizes over its stance concerning the tax measures proposed by the joint parliamentary committees to fund the new wage scale. The ABL voiced its opposition to the taxes proposed by lawmakers to cover the expenses of the new salary scale, which the Syndicate Coordination Committee is demanding Parliament to endorse. Most banks in Lebanon closed their branches across the country to protest against the matter today. The national news agency reported that Amal Movement MP Hani Kobaisi filed a complaint against ABL chief François Basile for accusing lawmakers of theft and embezzlement of public funds. Basile has warned of a revolution against politicians in Lebanon who bankrupt the country. State security forces have arrested a car theft gang in the eastern Bekaa Valley as part of the implementation of the security plan in the region. The national news agency says the 5-member Lebanese gang's activities were limited to robbing vehicles and later selling them or trading them for drugs. The arrest was made when a Syrian vehicle was reported stolen in the Bekaa region of Tal Baya. Security forces then dispatched a patrol in the area, arresting a thief who was driving the car on the Ghaida road east of the city of Zahli. The suspect confessed to committing car theft along with 4 accomplices. They all later confessed to stealing 7 old model vehicles, selling them to a man identified as AM. Khalid Hosseini, a former refugee from Afghanistan and one of the UN Goodwill ambassadors, visited Syrian refugees in northern Iraq. Hosseini has met many refugees, including 2 inspiring young women. He says he was impressed at how the women's activities helped them to find a purpose in a camp where many are living a suspended existence, waiting for the day to end.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله.
I remember reading somewhere, there's no winning in war. There's only, different degrees of losing. And I guess this week I had a chance to meet some people who've lost a lot. People whose lives have been completely turned upside down. As I walked through the camp, I just kind of saw this whole spectrum of things from people who are, they're very active, they're very resourceful. But there are also a lot of people who live in the camp in this kind of suspended existence, who don't have any business, they don't have work, and they get up in the morning and they eat, and then they spend the rest of the day waiting for the day to end in this kind of passive state. I remember meeting this young woman. Her name was Paiman, and she was 16 years old, and she was living with her parents and her siblings at the Kawargos camp, and she was, a really good writer, and her dream was to pursue writing in Syria. But because of the war, her family moved last August to the Kurdistan region, and now she's living in a camp where she can't attend school anymore. A massive blow to her self-esteem, her hopes, her dreams, and she was really very eloquent and just kind of really thoughtful and mature. I brought up the idea of school and the subject of education, and she just burst into tears immediately, and it really took me by surprise.
بزغ فجر تاريخ مشرق خط حروفه رجل قل مثيله بين الرجال.
She read me this essay that she had written, and it was an essay about women's rights. And she wrote another short piece about the mythology around Nowruz, which is the New Year celebration.
لمرأة كسرت حاجز الصمت والخوف ووقفت في وجه الظلم والاستبداد وناضلت من أجل قضيتها العادلة.
Just writing is something that you do because you can't imagine not doing it. And so I get a feeling that you are writing because it's in your heart. And to me, the fact that there's an obviously talented young woman whose dreams have been taken from her, that's kind of an embodiment of this immeasurable damage and the loss that's been done to the Syrian people because of this terrible war. One of the really tough things about being a refugee is that, you see your life reset at zero. All the things you've worked your whole life is taken, and it's as if it didn't exist. It's wiped off the board, and you have to start from zero. And it's very, very difficult to restart life. The psychological impact of feeling helpless and feeling like you're not useful, feeling that you're a burden, the psychological burden of that is very heavy. I met another young woman who was remarkable, and her name was Nailene. She was just this incredibly strong and fierce young woman. She had this really just kind of unshakable sense of confidence. What really I found remarkable is that she took such great pride in the fact that she's a professional.
مثلا بجي بشتغل وهيك أول شي بريح عن حالي وهن منه بقدي مصروف بيتي وجوزي وولادي. إني ما بحب إني شلون ما كنت ناقصة شيء بسوريا ما بحب إني نقص عليهم هون بشي كمان.
And she made sure that even this little salon in a tent in a refugee camp had a professional setting. I think it's just her way of fulfilling her dream, her way of finding purpose. And I was sitting on this hill that overlooks a Kawargos camp, and it was just, I have to say, a really beautiful scene. It was just about people who were just going on with their lives despite all the losses that they've suffered. People that have a human drive to continue life and to pursue happiness, however small it may be. That's such a weird thing about life, is that such kind of feelings of beauty and moments of grace can come out of tragedy and enormous suffering.
Coming up next, 2 members of the Muslim Brotherhood are killed in a shootout with security forces in Egypt. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 7 people have been injured in a clash between pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian protesters outside a hotel in Odessa, where a Ukrainian presidential candidate was staying. Pro-Russian separatists who have besieged a number of government buildings in Ukraine's eastern districts have turned down an amnesty offer handed by the government, stalking fear that a 48-hour ultimatum may end with violence. The government said it will not prosecute pro-Russian separatists if they surrender their weapons, but the armed men said they will not leave, fortifying barricades around the buildings with barbed wire and sandbags overnight. They said the government will have to first accept holding a referendum on self-rule before they evacuate the buildings. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk says he will do everything to prevent a crackdown on the pro-Russian protesters. 2 members of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt have been killed in a shootout with security forces in the Nile Delta north of Cairo. The MENA news agency says they were part of a group that had opened fire on police on a road between the cities of Al-Tanta and Al-Mahal al-Kurba in the Nile Delta province of Gharbiya. Reports say they had also tried to set ablaze a traffic police checkpoint, and the 3rd assailant had been arrested while others got away. Attacks on police and soldiers have become commonplace since the army deposed Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood last July following mass protests against his rule. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has hosted opposition leaders at the start of mediated talks intended to end 2 months of political unrest that has killed dozens of people across the country. The meeting, brokered by foreign ministers from the UNASUR bloc of South American governments, took place at the Miraflores Presidential Palace in Caracas and was broadcast live on TV. Maduro cautioned against unrealistic expectations and says what everyone is looking for is a model of peaceful coexistence and of mutual tolerance. Some opposition groups, including the party of jailed protest leader Leopoldo Lopez, boycotted the talks while dozens of demonstrators remain in jail. Protests broke out in the capital as talks were taking place. And now for news around the world in brief, a software bug called Heartbleed, which may compromise communication security over the internet, is causing concern among users and tech giants alike. Researchers say users' personal information like passwords and bank details could be compromised because of the bug, and that there is little internet users can do to protect themselves, at least not until exploitable websites upgrade their software. A woman has thrown a shoe at Hillary Clinton as the former Secretary of State was delivering a speech at a Las Vegas hotel. Television footage of the incident showed Clinton crouching to dodge the object as she stood on stage. The former First Lady joked about the incident as she continued her speech to some 1,000 people attending a metal recycling conference. At least 9 people have died and 32 have been injured after a tour bus carrying high school students collided with a FedEx lorry in Northern California. The crash took place near the community of Orland, about 150 kilometers north of Sacramento. Officials say the crash occurred after the lorry driver lost control of the vehicle and struck a passenger vehicle and then the tour bus. The UN Security Council has unanimously approved the creation of a UN peacekeeping force in the Central African Republic to try to stop violence between Christians and Muslims that has threatened to spiral into genocide. The force, authorized by the 15-member council on Thursday, will be known as MINUSCA and will be made up of 10,000 troops, 1,800 police, and 20 correction officers.
The force, to be known as MISCA, will take over in September from the 6,000-strong African-led mission currently on the ground. The Africans, with about 2,000 French troops, have been trying to restore calm after renewed intercommunal fighting erupted in December, with mainly Christian anti-Bellica militias attacking Muslim Seleka rebels in Bangui. Seleka forces overthrew the government just over a year ago. The country is now facing a huge humanitarian disaster, with more than half the population in need of aid and nearly 1 million people displaced. CAR Foreign Minister Toussaint Congo-Doudou welcomed the creation of the UN force.
Today, the adoption of this resolution authorizing the deployment of MINUSCA is the start of a decisive phase in the process of restoring peace and security and hence stabilizing the Central African Republic.
French Ambassador Gérard Ayrault said the new force would be a turning point.
Their mandate under Chapter 7 will focus on protection of civilians, restoration of law and order, support to humanitarian access, monitoring of human rights, and fighting impunity.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN Samantha Power visited the CAR this week. She told reporters the violence there has brought the country to the edge of disaster.
Untold horrors continue in small villages throughout the countryside, and more than 19,000 Muslims are trapped in the capital, too afraid of anti-Balaka forces to leave their hiding places.
Washington has pledged up to $100 million to support restoring security and an additional $67 million for humanitarian needs since January.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Speaker Nabih Berri refuses to meet with a delegation from the Association of Banks in Lebanon as they oppose tax measures proposed by Parliament to fund the new wage scale. State security forces arrest a car theft gang in the eastern Bekaa Valley as part of the implementation of the security plan in the region. And finally, pro-Russian separatists turned down an amnesty offer handed by the government in exchange for laying down their weapons. Those were today's headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice weekend.